I saw Mike Silver today tweeted that the Niners, in given $40 million to Hargrave, guaranteed $84 million over 4, that they could have done that contract in 2020 for DeForest Buckner, chose not to, lost Buckner, who's 2 years younger. And my thought to it, not my response, but my thought was, well, I don't think you can look at Hargrave in the context of DeForest Buckner, because today the 49ers don't have a $25 million a year quarterback. In 2020, they had a $25 million a year quarterback, and it made the finances are just different. Part of the reason you can sign Javon Hargrave is because your quarterback is either a $8 million quarterback or a $900,000 quarterback. The two of them combined cost less than half of what Jimmy Garoppolo was costing during the DeForest Buckner situation. So it's DeForest Buckner. This is not hindsight on Buckner. You lost the player you lost. He's gone. But this is not evidence that you could have signed DeForest Buckner.
Well, in 2020, it was a double whammy. The salary cap was $180 million. So just factor in you had an expensive quarterback, and the salary cap was dramatically smaller than it is. It's $226 million, I think I saw the other day, that every team had to get to by today, obviously, officially, or maybe by the 15th, but I think there was a date last week. So the math, it's not in a vacuum. You can't make that point, because the reason they did that is they could trade him. One, at the time, right, they added the 13th overall pick, and I celebrated the deal because the way big picture they were being built, like, kind of made sense. If one guy was going to be expendable, and the price point in which you got a guy, which at the time, pretty sure he'd never made a Pro Bowl. Now he's gone on to, maintain his level of play, and some would even say improve a little bit, and he's an elite human being. So it was a tough deal to be made, but this is football. I mean, I think you could argue the two most famous coaches of our lifetime, Walsh and Belichick, one of the things they get the most credit for is, like, God, they wheel and deal. They're always early. They make these shrewd moves. And it's like why they get held to such esteem, not just people that talk or fans, but like people in the league. Like, God, Bill's just what he's always able to do, or Bill Walsh. Belichick just copied Walsh. Sometimes you got to do that. Now, the problem is,
that's a great point.
The problem is they whiffed. They used that pick on a guy that, holy shit, when you see him, you could argue he looks better than the other two guys, and the other two guys are elite-looking defensive linemen, Armstead and Buckner. Last year, you and I were at a practice. He was standing right between Bosa and Armstead, and he's the best looking because he's thicker. He's terrible because his knee's fucked up. He's just, what happened in the NFC Championship game is beyond an embarrassment. So I am pro making the move. You can't do the hindsight because the math doesn't add up. But it cost them because the guy they had can't play because his knee's fucked. And he's not any good anymore. Because part of football, and this happens sometimes when you get injured, is like you have to either constantly be improving, right? Like, what is Nick Bosa? He's constantly getting better. What happens with Ayuk? He constantly improves. George Kittle constantly improves. Christian McCaffrey felt like he got better and better every week. It's hard to get better when you're never playing. And clearly you probably can't train or work out. So Kinlaw, the body looks sweet, but he can't improve. So if you're not improving, you're just getting worse. And now
he was a projection even pre-injuries, right?
Say that again?
He was a projection even when he came into the league. So it's not like he's trying to get back to what he once was.
So this was obviously in a vacuum, you would take Javon Hargrave over Kinlaw every day of the week. 3 years ago, you would have taken it. But they had to buy this player because, to me, of Javon Kinlaw. Like, if Javon Kinlaw was just a high-end player, I don't know if they make this move, right? If he was a guy that, you extend him, build around with Bosa, hopefully Drake Jackson that's kind of your core defensive lineman, you can allocate those resources other places. Maybe you can buy a tackle. Maybe you buy Juwan Jennings, or not Juwan Jennings, but Juwan Taylor. You would allocate, but you had to allocate these resources. Obviously, defensive line is very important because of the dud that you had as the 14th overall pick, and who is just, if I was a betting man right now, a lot of people say you cut him or whatever. There's no point to cutting him because you're on the hook for his money. you just play it out, but you no longer like back and forth on IR. You probably just he feels inevitable, like IR, see ya, just no longer around, right? If I was
Yeah,
a,
I mean,
that's what I would bet on right now.
you're not trading him anywhere.
Well, he's got no value. I think the NFC Championship game is an all-time like that's like Jamarcus Russell level play. Now you can say it's because of the injury or whatever, but if you're putting the guy out there in an important game and that's what you're getting, like there's no coming back from that. That tape guy is it's one thing to go viral on Twitter. Like that's actual, like this is the biggest moment and he's getting tossed around. Like, what's his value? There are a lot of random guys that would just try. It looked like he tapped out. He gave
Either he
up.
couldn't or he didn't, and neither you can't roll back with either one of those things.
God, he
Yeah.
got flung a couple times. He's a 330-pound human being. So you could argue that that miss led to this, which is a positive. But, you know,
Well, I would say this, like, not to go glass half full on it, but to your point on Walsh and your point on Belichick, like you do all the things you do if your career is long enough, knowing that some of those draft picks are going to hit and some of those free agents are going to hit and some of them are going to whiff. And to me, it's just like life. It's just about you're not going to ever do it perfectly. So can you respond? Plays after critical errors. And this is how you fix problems. And sometimes you need to be a little lucky. In the case of the Niners, they're lucky their quarterbacks are cheap. But you have to be able to pivot all the time. It's always going to be about pivoting. In life, in business, in drafting, it will never be perfect. You will have to overcome errors, mistakes, injuries, overpays, all of that stuff. And so they pivoted to one of the best players in the NFL.